Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spielboys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds. Woo! Adventure boys!
We're
such adventure boys.
Really old guy, super old. Hey everybody.
I'm really worried for his bones. Really worried that his bones will break.
My name is David Pill.
My name's Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
The Dial of Density.
Oh,
if it had crossed over with Back to the Future, I wouldn't have given a fuck.
Yeah, fuck it. Who gives a shit at this point?
No.
I miss the desert. I miss the sea. And I miss waking up every morning, wondering what wonderful adventure the new day will bring to us.
Those days have come and gone.
Perhaps not.
I'm gonna open the fucking arc on this movie. Jesus fucking
really
Christ,
just burn
Tom.
your eyes out of your head, huh?
Yeah, this is
Folks, it's the latest and the oldest Indiana Jones adventure. It's in theaters right now. It's doing okay. It's getting pretty average. It's getting pretty average reviews.
Yeah, it's not doing okay box office wise because this movie
really?
cost.
Oh, I thought it was doing okay.
This movie cost almost $3 million, Tom.
That's right. That's right. I just read that. It almost 300 million. I think you meant to say.
Yeah, 300. Yeah. And
let me tell you something, Dave. You don't see it in a lot of it.
You really don't.
Yeah,
I can't fucking believe this.
The action sequences in this movie look like dog shit.
Yeah, okay, so I hated this movie, Tom. Whatever little scraps that are in this movie that's good, I'll explain why it doesn't matter. But I want to hear your thoughts as well.
I actually liked this movie fine, which is why it was so frustrating to me. Like, I thought all of the non-action sequences were fine to good, like in terms of how they were shot and how they were staged and how they were paced and like the rhythm to it. But like, it seems like as soon as they got into action sequences, they fucking forgot all that. And everything is shot in like this weird claustrophobic Jason Bourne hypercuts. It's really muddy. There's so much digital effects in there. You can't tell what's going on anyway. It's antithetical to what Indiana Jones was supposed to be, which is this big stunt franchise.
And that's why I would say no to the good stuff.
Right.
But, like,
I see
here's
what you're
the
saying.
thing.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of reviews, and whatever. Generally speaking,
just real quick, I wanted to say that I'm fascinated that, in my opinion, this movie is good on paper. Like, there's not, in my opinion, what's wrong with this movie is the way they shot it.
I have some notes about the plot as well.
So do I, and we'll get into that. But like, that was kind of what the most surprising thing to me, which is what makes this a uniquely frustrating movie for me, is that I think this is a good movie and the action sequences were just shot like dirt.
Yeah, I just can't say it was a good movie. I understand that this, like, I've seen a lot of reviews of people like, oh, it was fun, I had fun. It doesn't compare, like, you can't compare it to the first ones. Of course it can't. I reject that kind of.
It's a sequel. You're making a sequel. So like when you make a sequel, you're entering into that territory specifically. So you had better be prepared to be compared to the previous ones. Yeah,
and I reject, like, this got lukewarm. And it's funny for me to push back on that. I'm just like, no, 0. This should get a 0. And I have reasons why. because I think starting from the fact that this movie shouldn't have been made to begin with.
I agree.
I saw the Dead Kennedys, Tom. I remember I remember the Dead Kennedys, and I saw them once they had after they broke up. And so it was the Dead Kennedys without Jello Biafra. And as a band in a vacuum, it's fine. Good band. You know, obviously, it's most of the members of the Dead Kennedys. As the Dead Kennedys, we booed them off the stage, Tom, because you can't do that.
It's like seeing the Misfits without Glenn Danzig. An
And so, likewise, I don't think people realized how vital Steven Spielberg is to Indiana Jones.
There is an instinct in this film, I feel like, because obviously this is the first in the series, the only one that's not directed by Spielberg, the only one that wasn't based on a story idea by Lucas. So this is completely divorced from the original creators. It's directed by James Mangold, who knows his way around a movie. He's made movies that I think are quite good. 3:10 to Yuma is up there.
At this point, after this and Logan, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's...
He's really inconsistent, but... The point I was trying to make is there's an instinct that feels apparent in like every frame of this film, which this movie is trying desperately to be different. This movie seems to be doing everything it can to not quote Steven Spielberg, which I understand. Yeah, hold on. I got a full thought here.
I know.
Which I understand from an artistic standpoint, because obviously you're an artist. You want to make your own statement. You want to find your own way. You want to say, this is my take on this classic character. I get that. But when Indiana Jones is what Indiana Jones is, the essence of the franchise, is so tied up in what a Steven Spielberg movie is. Like what we consider an Indiana Jones action sequence is actually a Spielberg action sequence. Like with the games, the escalation, the fact that it's filmed in a way to highlight practical stunt work that requires a lot of coordination and a lot of choreography. It's a lot of big wides, not necessarily big wides, but long shots rather than hypercuts. It's all of that stuff, which is just like a thing that he does that is like so tied into the DNA of an Indiana Jones movie that I think trying deliberately not quoting Spielberg in an Indiana Jones movie is a huge mistake.
I think so too, but I think you can even say that like just get understanding it. Like it felt like it lacked the understanding. Yeah. Where it's like you don't even have to do the same type of Spielberg shots.
It was the wrong
but you have
tone.
To sort
You're
of,
right.
And so like I think about Jurassic World as a very good example of what I think this movie is, which is I think in a couple of years people are going to be like, wow, that was a piece of shit, wasn't it? I think there's some great music in this for obvious reasons. I think there's a lot of imagery that we like, but I think the character of Indiana Jones was done very dirty in this. I think they also, more importantly, what you're getting to, the action of this is absolutely embarrassing.
It's really
they should be
bad.
ashamed.
It's really bad. It's like it's inexcusably bad.
Yeah, this is a stunt movie. It always has been, even with Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
It also has specific tones to it. It's a fantasy adventure film that's
there is some teeth to it, which Mangold did keep that, which I appreciated.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's not afraid to show you the bad guys getting pulverized, which is a staple of the Indiana Jones series. So they at least understood that tone, but like the spirit, it really doesn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie. It really doesn't.
So let's start with that, because the question is, what makes an Indiana Jones movie? I was thinking about what are the iconic things we think about? Running from the boulder, obviously. Opening the Ark of the Covenant. The fight with the strong Nazi, right?
Yeah,
that's just from the first movie.
It's always all those examples are starting with the hero with one perception of what's going to happen, and it immediately gets subverted. So he's scrambling for the rest of the scene, and that's always always
always the underdog,
that having to think on his feet. You know, the I'm making this up as I go line. He's a guy that shit goes wrong for him constantly, but he leans into it, and that's like an element of all of the action sequences in Indiana Jones.
Swinging on a whip, using the whip to swing, even in Crystal Skull. The strong man, even in Crystal Skull. You're right. He
doesn't swing on the whip a single fucking time.
Nor is there a strong man.
There is,
That's
but
in every
gets,
single film.
There is, but he gets dispatched by the kid.
Yes, that's true.
Yep.
And that is wrong. Because these are weird, unofficial things, but I would argue this is part of the DNA. The villain getting what they want and being destroyed for it is sort of in this, but it's a plane crash? What the fuck? Things like that to me, we'll talk. I mean, I have other things about
I have a specific thought on that, but yeah.
No booby traps in this. Not one. There was one puzzle. It's not really a treasure hunting film. He barely does any treasure hunting. Again, this is something that's sort of in all of them.
It's mostly just going to a place which is a part of Indiana Jones. But yeah, you're right. It's very little like... It's not really concerned with the antiquity of it, which is another thing that... Like, I don't necessarily... the ending of this movie is going to be really controversial, like the last act of this movie, because they travel back in time to a battle in ancient Greece, and Indiana Jones literally meets Archimedes. And there's something to that you and I were actually talking about the other day off mic, about something that you think Crystal Skull did wrong, and I kind of agree with, where you see too much of the alien. Because, Indiana Jones is an archaeologist, right? He's picking up the pieces that are left behind. So like an element of all the Indiana Jones movies is there's a supernatural thing that we're sort of in the dust of, like we're in its wake. We're kind of, we're picking up the pieces about it, and we can't ever know the people or beings or entities that left these things behind. We don't ever see them. And that's part of like the mystery, and kind of like there's always a little bit of a horror bent in Indiana Jones, and that's sort of where it comes from. It's like the artifacts are always something left behind by some ineffable force. Like something we can barely comprehend, and something that we don't see. Like the closest we get to seeing it is the ghosts come out. Like we see remnants of its power, like the ghosts coming out of the Ark, the stones burning through the bag and burning Molaram's hand, the ancient knight, and then the spaceship, and ultimately the alien in Crystal Skull, which you argued that seeing the alien was too much, and I agree with that. Like, I think the spirit of Indiana Jones is you never see the thing, you just see what they left behind.
Exactly. And I would argue this movie, time travel and aliens are acceptable. They're acceptable things.
For sure.
Yep.
For sure. I just think Indy, it felt weird to have Indy meet the history in that sense.
Yes.
Like, because he meets the knight in Last Crusade, and it's like we kind of already had this moment, and it was much more meaningful in Last Crusade because we had that whole backstory of his dad being tied up with Grail history, and also like Indy was raised Christian, so he's meeting evidence of a Christian God, and like it was this, and like he's able to use the Grail to save his dad's life. It was this big, powerful moment that was tied up in everything that the movie was about. But he meets Archimedes in this movie, and they try to treat it with the same weight, and it's just he's never mentioned Archimedes in the series. Like we don't have that connection here. So it's weird to throw him into it. Just felt wrong. Like it felt like too much. It felt like too much.
Let's talk about Indiana Jones the character, because all right. So he goes back in time, he meets Archimedes, they treat it like this big deal, right? So as you've already pointed out, that there's nothing in the previous films to show that Indiana Jones gives a shit about Archimedes.
Nothing even in this film.
I'm not saying he wouldn't, and this is the thing. They do this plot where his friend is obsessed with the dial, not him, and he is like, whatever.
Right, because he doesn't believe in spiritual mumbo jumbo.
Right. At the very end, he goes back in time, and the weirdest fucking thing happens. He wants to stay, and he cries about it, and he goes like, "No, leave me." This is the shit where I'm like, this isn't just a bad Indiana Jones movie. It's a bad movie, and it's also bad. Okay, question: why is he scared of bugs? Why is Indiana Jones scared of bugs in this? He's never been scared of bugs before. That's the entire thing. He's not scared of bugs. He's scared of nothing except for snakes.
Yeah.
Why would he be why would he be grumbling about the fucking moon landing and not want to care? He's a teacher.
He'd be all about the fucking moon. Although I do respect that. They just didn't explore it enough. It was the idea that he doesn't think there's any adventure left. Like, because his take on the moon is, well, there's nothing up there. It's just a wasteland, which is true in a technical and cynical way. And they could have done something interesting with that, but they didn't.
But Let me ask you a question. Would he think that way if perhaps he saw aliens?
Nope.
That there was nothing else to. Yeah. See, these are the issues where it's like he's inconsistent with the past characters. I can't stress this enough. I need people to really, really fucking go back and watch Indiana Jones and then watch this movie again and tell me if it's any good, because it is not good. It really isn't. I don't. So like he has no arc in this. He has no agency.
He doesn't. He gets
dragged from thing to thing to the point that the main character punches him and he is knocked out for the ending of the third act.
He wakes up for the reconciliation with Marion that was done off screen without him. Like he is so devoid of agency or an arc in this. It's really weird. Like I think, first of all, like I had a thought related to this where it's like, Crystal Skull, for all of its faults, I actually enjoyed as a send-off for Indiana Jones. I like where that movie left him. And we were talking about this a few days ago off mic, but I'm repeating it here for all of the benefit of all the listeners who are not my personal friends. Like the movie left him.
They're all your personal friends,
of
Tom,
course,
in a way.
Yeah, in a way, you guys all are. You're beautiful. But it leaves him where like he's getting married to Marion, it's the quote unquote Bond girl that we've all always liked the best. She was everybody's favorite.
I mean, he groomed her, Tom. He groomed her.
Okay.
I can't. Don't worry about it.
Like, I'm going. All right.
She was a child.
Sure. I mean, I think.
Listen, I love Indiana Jones, Tom. I love Indiana Jones, but that's always a funny detail that something fucked up happened. But go on. Sorry, I don't want to
It also depends on how literally you take that.
That's true.
I know there's the infamous recording of them brainstorming the movie and Lucas and Kasdan really being gung-ho about making Marion a teenager, but also in that recording, is Spielberg saying she'd better be older than that. So
I mean, it's not.
It really depends on how literally you take "I was a child." Anyway. Yeah. The fact is he was much older, and sure. Anyway, the point is
different time.
The point is she's the one we liked, and he ends up with her, and he's got this son, and he was cool, and we liked him, and they're all together, and it was that way for 15 years. It's been 15 years since Crystal Skull, Dave.
Yeah, I want to keep talking about that a little bit because
real quick to finish my point.
Oh, sure.
Is they left him in a place that I felt satisfied as a lifelong Indiana Jones fan. Like I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't know who Indiana Jones was. So it's been a hero of mine my whole life. That movie ended. I was like, I like ending it this way. I like knowing that Indy lives happily ever after with his best gal and his cool son and all of his friends. And then they fucking dig him up 15 years later, and what do we learn when this movie starts? His fucking son is dead, and he and Marion are split up. And it's like, wow, if you're gonna dig him back up, if you're gonna rip this wound open after giving us that fine ending almost 2 decades ago, and make a huge offer like this, where you're gonna set the character in such chaos that you're literally killing his son and taking his wife away from him. It's like, boy, this is a bold offer. You better have a good reason, a good compelling story to tell about Indy to justify putting him through this. And nope, they don't.
Nope. You know what it reminds me of, Tom?
What's that?
Logan. Yeah. The movie Logan. Because that's the same thing where they're like, okay, let's start with a really depressing situation. And then, we're going to earn it by making it like good. And it was like, this was just another superhero movie. That's how I feel about this. This was another mediocre, middle of the road action movie. And as you're saying, like, I totally agree where Crystal Skull, it's like, the Shia LaBeouf of it all. I get it. The CGI of it all.
I like Shia I get in that movie. I like his character.
Well, yeah, but there's like a meta aspect where people
but I liked his character in that movie.
That's what I was getting to. Is like I like the greaser son. I think that's a good take on a son of Indiana Jones. It's a new version of Indiana Jones. You could extend that character if you wanted to. I think the fact that it's Spielberg and Lucas, for better or for worse, it's them.
That's the sauce.
I think there's 100%. There's shit I didn't like about that movie. I'm not going to do revisionist. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend that movie was good.
The last act of that movie is a mess.
Yeah, but things like using the atomic age and like and playing that up, cool idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if they executed it perfectly, but these are all good instincts. And then the fact that, like you said, happily ever after, where, and you think about Indiana Jones is like, they make him a curmudgeon in that, but they still make him like respected, because of course he would be respected.
Right.
He would go on to write books to be an important person.
He'd be super famous in the field of or infamous in the field of academia. But like, yeah, it ends with oh shit, I lost my train of thought.
It ends with him just getting married and still taking the hat and walking off.
Yeah, you said he'd be respected. Anyway, there was something to that my brain can't remember. Anyway, but yes, totally agree.
Yeah. And so starting him off in a shitty 1-bedroom apartment with his son's death, it's exactly what you're saying. It was like, okay, I need you to earn this, because this is not only is this depressing, it doesn't really make sense.
No.
Like, why is he in this position? Why is he in it? Did something go horribly wrong?
He's retiring as like a professor, a tenured professor of archaeology after decades.
And then the fact that it still ends in that shitty apartment, but Marion's there.
Well, it's
I'm just like, okay.
I think it's he moved out and Marion's coming to him, I think is how they're explaining it. So it's like they just got separated is the vibe of the movie. Yeah. But like, I hate it. Like, why would you do this to him? And like, they don't have a story to tell. Like we explained, he just gets knocked out by Phoebe Waller-Bridge in the past and wakes up in his apartment. And Phoebe has just repaired everything for him. Like, Marion just walks in and they just reconcile. He hasn't done anything. Like, he's not learned any lesson.
Yeah.
Like, it's I remember what I wanted to say about Crystal Skull is that they had that they had that fun arc where he's turning into his dad.
Yes,
like
he's a curmudgeon.
He's a curmudgeon, but he's exactly. So, like they didn't even have something like that. Like it's weird what this movie chooses to reference about the Indiana Jones series and what
100%
what it comes up like right up against and doesn't reference. Like we said, he never swings on his whip a single time. The movie doesn't open with the Paramount logo fading into a mountain. Although Temple of Doom doesn't either. But
I want to talk about that in a moment, but I just want to note, remember when fucking he wants to get the Ark or the Holy Grail, and he has to let it go?
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't they just have a scene where has to let it go, where he makes the decision? Why does he get punched out? Like, that's what's so weird about that moment. Is like, first of all, they didn't set up him wanting to be back there.
He's already been through this. Like, he was dangling off a ledge with his father holding his hand after he just went on this huge restorative adventure with his dad to repair their relationship, and it's all this unspoken emotion coming to the surface, and it's he
calls him Indiana.
The sum total of their whole lives collides in that moment, and he says, Indiana, let it go. And that's his dad, who was obsessed with the Grail, and Indy lets it go. It was a whole fucking thing about Indy choosing It's embarrassing what they don't remember this character's already been through when they do this movie.
and then the idea that they're trying to create some sort of thing between him and Wombat. I forget the character's name. He calls her Wombat. Helena. She's great. The actress is great. Character's great.
Fleabag. Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
I don't know her. And what
we don't know her at all. They're introducing two brand new characters because she has a little short round type sidekick with her.
Yep.
So it's always tough when you're introducing two brand new characters in the fifth movie.
And and like you could say like, oh, technically we didn't know Sean Connery, but there was like it felt like it was like, oh, it's his dad.
There's
it's
a shadow hanging over him. Yeah,
exactly. Like it worked in that sense. This character, but the other part is there's no dynamic at the end. She just hits him and is like, I'm dragging you, and it's like there's no arc between them. Between their characters in a satisfying way.
There is an arc that they tell us is happening, but it doesn't actually happen because the conflict between them is that he was supposed to be her godfather. Her dad, Toby Jones, kind of went crackers and died, and he wasn't there for her. He didn't. And they do a fun scene where she points out that is the literal point of a godfather is you're supposed to step in if something happens to the parents.
Right.
And he didn't do that. So she's become like a worse version of Indy. She's closer to like Belloc than he is. She's a real wheeler and dealer. But like the idea is that after spending this time together, she becomes more compassionate and he sort of steps into his role as being her father. because he just lost his son. Like, all of that's on the table and could have worked, but let me make it clear that they don't do any of that. Like, none of that is actually in the movie. That's what they want us to feel, but the movie doesn't actually do any of that stuff. Also,
who is Toby Jones?
His friend, I don't know.
Exactly.
It's one of his archaeologist
I don't
friends.
Know. We have friends of his that we've established in previous movies. We even have a child that he took care of briefly. There are a lot of characters that could come back or could have a connection to him.
Legitimately,
but they make up a new friend to have a goddaughter. So it's like, I am not invested. Like, why isn't it a Brody? Why isn't it somewhat related to Marcus Brody?
Well, why wouldn't it be Marcus's kid? Why wouldn't it be one of Salah's kids? Or why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be Mutt? Like, they just decided to kill him off instead.
Mutt?
Like, it's like what? It's there's
short round. Like, for fuck's
that's
sake.
what I was about to say. I was baffled that he didn't show. Like, I was so expecting a Ke Huy Quan cameo in this movie because he's blown up. He just won the Oscar, but he's not in this movie at all. It's like, boy, if there was ever a time to mention Short Round again, it would be in this movie.
This movie. All right, so you mentioned the Paramount logo, and I want to talk about that because I think that's a microcosm for the entire problem, which is weird.
That gelled in my head in the first 5 minutes. Like, oh, they don't understand. It's the things I mentioned earlier. That's fascinating to me. The things they choose to reference and the things they choose not to, even though they come right up against some things that would be obvious references. So, like, the fact that it doesn't start with that, it instead just starts with a really, like, Temple of Doom doesn't start with a mountain either, but you know what it does start with? A fucking elaborate dance sequence to Anything Goes.
Well, it also, for the record, it still fades from the Paramount logo to a mountain on a giant.
That's
like that
you're
coin.
Right. You're right. It does still do it.
Every movie does the fade, even if it's a fucking, hedgehog thing. The groundhog.
So it's still, it right off the bat, like 5 minutes in, I kind of knew we were in trouble because it was like, the action sequences look bad, and because it didn't do the most basic, obvious reference to the original movies. So right away it tells me, oh, you didn't know what was important about Indiana Jones.
Here's what I think it actually is. So the Paramount logo does happen, but then the Lucasfilm logo happens after, and I bet you that there is a legal reason that the logos go in the order they go in. And if you cared about the movie, you would say, yeah, but we have to do it the other way. So let's make sure we do it the other way. But Disney doesn't care. So they just say, no, this is the order the logos go. So what do they? So what does the Paramount logo symbolize? It's always to a mountain to mountain. It's always this idea of like we're getting into an adventure,
discovery. A place.
So what they do instead,
an exotic place, a locale where people don't normally go.
Yep. What they do instead is they fade the Lucasfilm logo, which I don't know if you know this, is square shaped. So right away, I don't know if people even noticed that they did it. It's a square to a square.
And they faded into a door lock.
Into a door lock. And it was just like, okay, so not only did you have to not do the Paramount logo, probably because of corporate bullshit, which again, if you find yourself having to face that, you should ask yourself, like, maybe we shouldn't make this movie if we can't even do this.
Right, if we can't even agree on this, like for the spirit of the film, we can't even agree on this.
Yeah, because the fucking Paramount logo is in there. So, okay, a square. I don't know, fade it into something exciting? Not a fucking lock symbolizing prison instead of adventure?
Well, that actually was an apt way to open the film because all of the action sequences feel claustrophobic as fuck.
There is a scene later where
bizarre.
You remember when they're being chased by a car through the alleyway it gets too small and the car crashes behind them, which has been done a million times. They shoot that in like a medium close up, and it's like, why aren't we seeing it?
It was weird.
It was weird. This beginning sequence, I gasped, by the way, when I saw Indiana Jones's rubber face. I thought it was obvious. I'm sure it's different for different people.
He looks fine when he's not moving or speaking. But when he starts speaking, brother, he looks like a fucking ghost from a PS3 game.
He really does.
Like
it's very bad.
It's not great.
It begins with this Nazi castle, which is fucking, Last Crusade.
Classic Indy,
That's
sure.
It isn't because I there's a lot of parts, like you were saying, where it's like they choose to remind us of better things.
Yeah.
And so think about the opening of every Indiana Jones up until this point. There is a vibe.
It's been
right,
and they've all been like all-time classic. Like even like Crystal Skull obviously is less so, but it's still like
it's a good fucking opening.
It was big enough that it coined a phrase like nuking the fridge, and it's a pretty good fucking opening. Like that whole sequence in Area 51 fucking rules.
So I'm not even talking about half hour in. I'm talking like 5 minutes in. So like Raiders, obviously he comes out of the shadows, the gun. The musical number at the beginning of Temple that's going into this like James Bond spy-esque sequence. And again, Raiders, we know it, the booby trap. The fucking River Phoenix sequence. Every time they kind of wait a little bit to reveal Indiana Jones. Mm-hmm. It's a big deal. And then even the River Phoenix one, we don't even technically see Harrison Ford for a while. The fucking Crystal Skull, the army guys racing the people in these beautiful Spielberg wonders. They break in, they take him out. Again, it's good. That's a good intro for Indiana Jones. They whip him out of the trunk.
It immediately introduces you to the vibe of the film, like the free-spirited teen greaser vibe of the 50s, and then it's like, nope, Cold War, hardcore, Black Dagger shit.
This movie, you see Indiana Jones maybe in the first 30 seconds, maybe even 20 seconds, and he is a rubber-faced ghoul, and then they just blast you into a sequence, a action sequence that's not very good. And I was like, where are the fucking vibes? Like, every other movie takes, like, and this is the Spielberg of it all, every other movie takes its time, gives us a few minutes to, like, take it and sets the tone, where it tells you, like, okay, this is the adventure you're on. This one immediately goes into an action sequence with no fucking really, like, reverence for, like, that, the start of the movie, introducing it. You really feel the lack of Spielberg.
On paper, this sequence should have worked, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the noose idea was the best thing they had in the movie.
The train sequence on paper is not bad. Yep. Like that's a cool idea for a train sequence. Obviously, if you're going to do a train sequence, there was already a pretty great one in Last Crusade. Yep. So if you're going to do another train sequence, you'd better make it good. And like on paper, like all of the ideas, like there's different things that happen and different beats in the sequence that I really enjoyed and thought were clever. It's just, it's so confined the way it's shot. It's so muddy because it's at night. And I also suspect part of that is to distract from the de-aging effect on Harrison Ford's face. And then the de-aging effect, the fact that all of these stunts are performed by like a rubber-faced digital homunculus. It's like, I can't... Yep. This is not Indiana Jones. Like Indiana Jones is about the practical stunts, and like it is not just the stunt work, it's how it's staged and shot and the choreography of it. It's like,
it's also not setting the tone for the film.
No, not at all.
Because we don't follow a young Indiana Jones. Really, you know? Like, I mean, Last Crusade does that as well.
But Last Crusade is establishing the relationship with his dad.
Yes. Yeah, this doesn't even have the wombat stuff. It has the father, which is like, again,
right. They should have introduced Helena in the opening, honestly.
Yeah. Maybe start it from her perspective.
That'd have been interesting,
Yeah. It looks like crap. The night shots, it's all that blue shot where there's no lighting.
It feels
like a very,
very clearly day for night. It's all
it's the mediocre modern look of night.
There is
like lighting,
a digital sheen on every shot of this film.
Yeah.
And
the creative stuff you mentioned, I think a lot of it's just from other movies or from under Indiana Jones. Like you mentioned the train. They like do it like 4 times where a character's head is almost hit by
I don't mind
like hanging off of things. I don't mind it, but it was like the only thing they had. And again, that's been done in Indiana Jones a few times. The gun turning around, that's been done. The Nazi castle again, like I agree with you where it's like on paper it can be good.
Yeah.
But the reason it can be good is also because it's just taking a lot of the aspects of previous Indiana Jones.
Sure, but you could make that argument about any one of the sequences from the sequels, really.
Yeah.
I might
No,
like I like
true.
I like the constant almost getting their heads knocked off is great. I think it's a great game because like you forget about it and then another thing comes right. Oh shit! Right, we have to watch out.
Yeah, but
for
they don't play it like a game. I mean by that is you would want him to like almost get his head knocked off, punch a guy, fall, and almost get his head knocked off again. Like it would be Succession.
Right.
But they just do it like every few minutes. Because it's like they don't know what else to do.
Like I was saying, it's good on paper. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not
sure.
shot well.
The horse subway again, horse versus tank in Last Crusade. So it's like okay,
that's a
good idea,
and that is a fucking all-time sequence too. It's so good.
And this, it was so boring.
It's just a digital painting. Like I feel nothing during these sequences, which is so sad for Indiana Jones.
Because then he gets in the subway and he says like Subway's faster, and they're trying to do a no ticket, and it's like thanks for reminding me of the better movie. Like every time they tried to do something that nod, I was just reminded. And I swear to fucking God, we haven't talked about the lack of the Spielberg oneer, which I felt. Because there is like a cut.
It's intrinsic to Indy's DNA. Like
there is like a cut every
shots.
2 fucking seconds in this movie.
It only happens during the action sequences, really, because Mangold lets the drama scenes play, and he does interesting things during them. Like there's when they film the scene where they load, I think it's the kid, or it may be Helena. They kidnap somebody. Anyway, it's during the Moon Day Parade where they load somebody into the back of the truck, and it's filmed in a really compelling way. Like the camera follows, and then it goes right up to the back of the door, and the door shuts, so you really feel that sense of motion and then sudden confinement. Like there's a lot of stuff like that, and like Mangold's not a bad director. Usually, maybe he is, but I didn't think he was. But so, which is it makes the action sequences so frustrating because they're so confined and you can't see anything, and there's so much digital bullshit on every frame, like color correction and de-aging and digital effects, and it's just there's nothing that comes close to just the truck chase scene in Raiders, and that film is 40 years old.
It's kind of pathetic. It really does feel like
you can't.
Like there's a behind the scenes you can watch like a featurette on how practical. It reminds me of when Jurassic World did the featurettes of like it's real, and it's like no, it's not. No, Stop pretending.
You made 2 puppet heads, and you're just painting the rest of it with digital effects. Like,
and this is the same where in the behind the scene video, again, minute long behind the scene video for this. They show multiple CGI scenes in their one about how practical everything is. They show like the plane scene, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like there is definitely like, yes, there's a stuntman on a horse. Yes, those car chases, you can tell they're real. But for Indiana Jones, that's nothing. That's fucking nothing. Give me a boat chase, you know? Give me the tank. Give me like that's the thing. This shit is nothing for Indiana Jones. And to try to fucking act like, ooh, look at these stunts. And then on top of that, the fact that they shot it so badly that I can't even tell what they're hiding.
Yeah.
When he does the shelf stunt, when he knocks over the shelf, it takes like 3 shots to show that happen.
And I was like, should have been
the Mummy,
bitchin'.
Man. Yeah.
Well, and
the Mummy did this 20 years ago better.
Indiana Jones did it in Crystal Skull when he's running on top of the shelves in Area 51, and he fucking whip swings down to the truck, and all the shelves are falling over, and that's a fucking practical stunt.
Exactly, and it looks like one.
And
so
it looks great.
I don't know.
And you know how they hit Indiana Jones? Lighting. You couldn't see his face because of the way it was lit.
And so, like, I don't want to hear anybody tell me that these stunts are practical, even if they sort of are.
Because they're doing practical stunts in front of a green screen. It's like Tom Cruise holding his breath for that sequence in Mission Impossible 5, but it was all digital. So it was like, well, why did you even bother?
Yeah, exactly. And then the fact that there's so many cuts, the auction scene where there's like, okay, we have to fight our way out of here. I was like, you know what this would be a good time for? A fucking oneer. Like, give me something I can work with here. Instead, it's just cut to shit. Every sequence is cut to shit.
The Indiana Jones action sequence are all about movement, right? It's all about being in motion, and the continued escalation and the game of it. But they're all about being in motion and trying to get. Yeah, so it's so
and it's
weird
all about,
that
like,
all the way this movie is shot. it's shot specifically in a way that cuts the motion and limits the rhythm. It just makes it real maladroit, and you never get a rhythm going, and you don't get a sense of motion. It just feels so anti Indiana Jones.
And if the reason why, if someone says, well, he was too old, then don't make the movie. If the reason was why, well, we didn't have enough time to shoot this right, I would say, no, you spent like $300 million on this. You have no excuses. There's no excuses to not make the action scenes of your action movie good. It's a stunt movie. There is a stunt show devoted to it at Disney.
Again.
It is a stunt movie. And if you're cutting away and not showing the stunts, then you have a big fucking problem.
Again, in Crystal Skull, Harrison Ford was in his 70s. And they got around that. Like I just said, there's a thrilling practical stunt scene where Indy is running atop some shelves in Area 51 and then whip swings down to a truck. And they did that by hiding the stuntman's face with lighting. You don't need a fucking $100 million supercomputer to do that shit.
Yeah. It's fundamentally not Indiana Jones in the stunts. And I would say on top of I'd say a fucking flaccid ass plot where Indiana Jones, the character, again, I don't think he has no arc, he has no agency, and he's not consistent from the previous films. Like this is a fucking F to me. And then there's stuff where I'm like, in a vacuum, like why was that random CIA agent in this? That lady was cool. Would have been neat to have her in the movie.
I really thought there's a subplot where Mads Mikkelsen is part of Operation Paperclip. He's been brought over to America to work on rockets and shit. America did that with Nazi scientist Werner von Braun, most famously. So Mads' character helped build the rocket that sent the astronauts to the moon. So there's this subplot where he's got like an attaché or like a little group of spooks basically assigned to him, and they seem to be trying to get the dial as well. But partway through, one of them, that super cool lady is like, hey, this guy has gone way far afield. Like, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's like lost his mind. And they do like a heel turn on her and they shoot her. But like her partner is Boyd Holbrook. Boyd Holbrook is like the main henchman in this film. And he's the guy from Predators. If you remember, he's the main character. And he's got a deep Southern accent in this movie. He's fucking as American as cornbread, I guess. And they just have him be like Mads Mikkelsen's like number one guy throughout the whole movie. And then at the very end, when they travel back in time, he starts speaking German. So it's like they had this whole weird subplot that they sort of jettison and don't really like. I really thought
they don't explain.
They're keeping this Boyd Holbrook character around. Yeah, like I thought like, oh, he's obviously he wants the dial for the American government because there's no way the fucking U.S. government wouldn't learn about a time traveling device and not want it. Like that's why they're helping him. But like he's just like full blown Nazi. Apparently, like there's a lot of stuff they just leave on the table or like don't explain.
I thought the villains were fucking weak.
I liked Mads. I understood Mads.
Oh, good actors all around. But Mads is simple. He's simple. He's a Nazi.
I appreciated
scientist.
I appreciated the turn that he wants to go back in time to kill Hitler because Hitler was a fucking fuck up.
Yes. But I think there was something. I actually can't put my finger on this, so I might have to like think about this. But something felt off about these villains versus the originals, even Crystal Skulls, in terms of how we presented them in the scenes. Like, I feel like we spent too much time with them.
It's the same thing that you've talked about before in the Jurassic World movies where they don't film the dinosaurs in a way that really conveys their presence. Yeah. Like, Spielberg understands to shoot the villains and like their subordinates, like the weird Nazi toady guy in the first movie that gets the medallion burned into his hand,
right?
Like the big guys, even the big Russian dude in Crystal Skull. Like Crystal Skull has a lot of faults, but like he still filmed that guy in a way that every time that guy was in a scene, you're like, he's gonna fuck someone up, and this guy's gonna be a real problem to deal with,
right?
And he never does that. Mangold never does that in this movie.
I also feel like he shot like I have to rewatch, but like I'm sure this isn't entirely right, but I feel like the villains only really appear when Indy is around or main character. Like rarely do we spend time alone with the villains, where this movie spent more time alone with the villains, and they made them like that was the thing, is like they felt less mysterious. We spent more time with them. They also just like felt like there was the two main ones, and then there was the big guy. And again, like I also didn't feel like any brawls, any one-on-ones. It didn't feel at the end like I didn't even realize like when they all just get like dumped out of a plane, and
they
like,
really robbed us of a fight.
just,
like Indy usually fights somebody. He fights that big Nazi in front of the plane. He fights that big child slaver on the conveyor belt. He fist fights Malaram dangling from the side of a cliff. Like he fights a fucking tank in Last Crusade.
Right,
and Crystal Skull, he fights that big Russian guy. Like there's always like a brawl. That you're right. That's another. Like this movie really doubled down on the chases. There's like 6 or 7 chases in this movie. Maybe not that many, but like every action sequence pretty much in this movie is a chase. So they understood that aspect of Indiana Jones movies being about motion, but like there's no brawl, which is like brawling. The other aspect of like Indiana Jones fucking punches people.
Right. I never really felt like I knew how many henchmen there were either, where it's like,
they always seem to get new ones.
Yeah. And I didn't, like you said, I didn't really get who they were as a group. And then, like they know they are supposed to do certain things. Like, for example, they kidnap Indiana Jones at the end. I would argue why. Unlike the other Indiana Jones, they need him in the other Indiana Jones, right? They're like, we need you to solve the thing. And this one, they're just like, take him. And it's like, why are you taking him? Why are you? Because you need to. They also shoot him, which I don't know if you remember Last Crusade, but that used to be a big problem when someone gets shot. And Indiana Jones just gets shot in the chest in this. And then there's like 3 more scenes and he's just existing.
There's like 25 minutes of movie after he gets shot.
Yeah, he's just shot.
However,
for
the movie does treat it like a big deal. Like he's visibly diminished. He's not able to physically do as much. It's the whole kind of linchpin of the conflict when Phoebe Waller-Bridge is trying to convince him to come back to her time, and he's like, no, I want to stay here, and she's like, you're gonna fucking die in like
you're gonna die
if you stay
but
here.
It's like he shouldn't be standing. You know,
no,
and
he shouldn't be, but that's also.
I would argue that's not. Well, I would argue that's not Indiana Jones, because again, when people get shot in Indiana Jones, they're usually down. Like, has Indiana Jones ever been shot and kept going?
Like that?
Yeah.
No.
Because his father was shot and it was a big deal. In fact, in this movie, a CIA agent is shot in the chest and she's down. And then he's shot like more or less in the same area. I know, like obviously
it's in the magic shoulder area that movies shoot their heroes in.
That just stood out as being weird in general. But like that's more of a nitpick. But at the same time, it didn't feel like Indiana Jones. I don't know. Something about that.
They do another scene where in the Moon Day parade, like Boyd Holbrook is trying to find Indy in a sea of people, so he shoots his gun in the air and everybody gets down. It's a cool shot. It's a really cool sequence.
A cool idea.
Unfortunately, it's a cool sequence right up until they start chasing him on his horse, and then it goes into shit. But like, so in that sequence, like, it was a nice reminder that, oh, this is the early 60s. Like, we haven't become just used to mass shoot. Like, a gun is still a big fucking deal in this time. So you're right. It is weird that at the end of the movie, he kind of gets, and he gets shot, and they do treat it with some weight, but probably not as much as they should have. You're right.
Yeah. Not really. Not for Indiana Jones, I would say.
Not for Indy, I guess.
Why is he telling them that their calculations are wrong at the end? Why would he tell them that?
Because he wants them to know I understood that perfectly. Because like from Indy's point of view, he's fucked. Like, they're taking him with them. They just want to take him with them to the past, so like Mads can be like, hey, look, I won, you lost, haha, so he can gloat and shoot him. But like, so Indy can't do anything. Like, he's doomed. But he is seeing that they're fucked and that their plan is going to fail. So
Right.
he can't resist letting them know because he wants to see them realize that they've fucked up before they kill him. Like, I got
Yeah,
that.
that's
I
fair.
understood that perfectly. I would have told
That's
them.
fair. That sequence, man, because again, I remember thinking, like, is this really how it ends? And I don't mean the time travel. I mean that the entire thrilling conclusion takes place in a green screen cockpit. Like, that also fucking boggled my mind. Like, even the young people, like fucking Helena, she doesn't really fight people. Like, that was the thing that kind of amazed me too. They brought a younger person on. I was like, surely she'll fight people.
She fought some people.
She dumps them all out of the plane. She just pulls a lever and they all fall.
I meant throughout the film, but yeah.
Oh, throughout the film, yeah, a little bit. But the fact, like, this is another thing where it's like, as far as I can think of, most of the Indiana Jones end with some sort of brawl or some sort of showdown or some sort of clever moment, right? Like,
no, most of them don't end with a brawl. Most of them end with the villain hanging themselves and Indy realizing that they've hung themselves and just stepping back and letting them do it.
I guess it's also him outsmarting them.
Yes.
I guess Temple of Doom ends with a bit of a brawl.
It's more of a fight.
But even that is a standoff. I think the word is standoff, right? Where he's cutting the rope.
Bit of a show. Raiders, they're tied to a stake. Like Last Crusade, he's just sort of being held at gunpoint, and Julian
but he
Glover
definitely
drinks the wrong.
them.
Yeah, he always outsmarts them.
Last Crusade, he outsmarts them. He's don't look. Raiders, don't look. He figures it out. Last Crusade, solving the puzzle.
Temple of Doom, he figures out, you betrayed Shiva. He makes the rocks come alive to beat Molaram.
Right.
And Crystal Skull, he realizes that they shouldn't be in that antechamber with Yeah.
It's the weaker one. But like, I really feel like this one, skipped on that, where it was just like they're on a plane. They kind of beat some people up, and then the plane crashes. They jump out, and the plane crashes, and I was like, "That's like the middle of Temple of Doom, not the end of a movie." He doesn't outsmart them in any way. He doesn't outpuzzle them. He doesn't solve any puzzles, except for the water displacement, which I thought was lazy as shit.
Well, it happens in a minute,
yeah. And so, like, there's no outsmarting him. I think that's part of why they wanted him to yell that the calculations were wrong. Even though I also am confused about that, because do they say like, oh, Archimedes, it's just he designed it just to come back to him? Is that what they're saying?
What do you mean?
So I thought at the end they said like it doesn't do time travel at all. It just designs it for you to come back to Archimedes' time. Am I making that up? Because otherwise it is a staggering coincidence that they went back in time to meet Archimedes with a device that Archimedes made.
Yes, you're right. Yes, it was always... Well, actually, I'm not sure.
I think this movie is really bad.
Like, I can't tell, because Indy shouts that thing about...
the calculations being wrong. So I was like, I was ready. Honestly, when I was so nihilist at that point. I was like,
ready to go to dinosaur times or some shit. Yeah.
Or I want him to cause 9/11. Fuck it. Like whatever. Like the future. Indiana Jones goes to the future. I'd be like, fuck it, let's do it. Or like, dinosaurs, let's do it. But they went to probably the most boring location to me, which was a battle, scene. That again, we had really no like. There was nothing leading up to it in terms of Indiana Jones, where it's like, why would he be like, if it was like the Crusades or something, makes a little more sense.
If it had been the Crusades, it would have made perfect sense.
Right. But they brought it to Archimedes, and I don't know why the fuck they did that, other than that he's the person. And then they sort of say like, oh no, it was always designed to bring you back to Archimedes.
They do say there is a bit about how Archimedes specifically invented it to bring help to his side during that war.
The calculations weren't wrong, or rather they were irrelevant.
I think the calculations were irrelevant.
And he's also saying like, it's because of the tectonic whatever, like the movement, like the thing, but they're going into a rift. So like the calculations aren't wrong, right? He's looking for a rift. and the rift is there, and he's like, "No, this isn't the right rift, I guess."
Well, they're not
And it's
entering
like,
it.
oh.
They're not entering it at the right coordinates. Is what
Right.
Indy seems to be suggesting. But
Yeah.
it does.
But then
It
that-
does
yeah,
seem
that-
like it was irrelevant. Yeah.
Right, and then we should have had that matter. And yeah, it was irrelevant. And then like imagine if they went back to a time that was really hard or like intense, dinosaurs, fuck it. And then the fun would be getting back. But they skip that. He gets punched out and wakes up back. So again, you think about these
Well, the way every other movie has gone, like it would have made more sense for Indy to figure out that the time travel wasn't going to be what they thought. Like him and said, "Oh, Archimedes didn't design it to travel to any point. He designed it because he wanted help. We got to get out of this plane."
Yeah,
And then he would
exactly.
leave, and then the bad guys would get zapped back in time and get stuck there. That's how Indiana Jones works typically.
and they would get murdered horribly,
Right,
or something like that. Yeah.
They step in their own shit. They step on a rake and they fuck themselves up because they don't understand what the thing is. But Indy understood it.
Right. Yeah. It's just
It's yeah, you're right. It is kind of weirdly reverent to some aspects of the series, but like not to most of the spirit of it.
not really. Also, Antonio Banderas is in it for a scene, and I don't know
That
why.
was a baffling casting decision.
There's also little things like the kid runs off for very little reason. I thought
No reason whatsoever.
and they don't really set
no
him up.
reason
Yeah.
whatsoever.
It's just so he can get kidnapped. And the kid, I know what they were trying to do. They didn't accomplish it. The kid's fine. He's not really a character. They just make him short round again. It was like, all
Kind
right.
of, yeah.
I just think there were probably little moments in this that you could pick out, but it's like finding, I don't know, candy in a pile of shit for me, where I'm like, it's all shit then. Like it's just, I think this movie is like shameful. I really do. And I think that like this is a sign that the bar has been really lowered at this point. Like the idea that like I get it, we've all been through a traumatic time, which of course leads to I would argue some of the worst movies ever whenever America or the world goes through trauma.
It really does.
Yeah, and I think we're in another one of those, and I think this is a movie much like, I don't know, the Star Wars prequels or Jurassic World. Luckily, this isn't making enough money that they're going to make more of them, probably. But I think that it's like, yes, the music is there. We all want to be in the movies. And I think the bar is just kind of so low that people are accepting it. But honestly, not even, because it's not really doing that good.
It's getting
like,
real
I don't think it's
mid reviews. Yeah.
exactly. And so like my weird take is like mid isn't bad enough. Like it's true is that in a vacuum you could maybe argue it was mid, but as an Indiana Jones, it fails his character, it fails the tone,
Right.
it fails the action.
It is a worse movie than Crystal Skull.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Never a question of that. And Crystal Skull had more right to exist because
Yep.
George Lucas was like, let's make another. And yeah, that's more of a right.
And it closed out the
grab.
character.
Yep.
Like this is digging him up to punch him in the stomach and then just drop him back into an apartment. Yeah.
It just felt so gross. And like, it's just, I don't know. I think people should be fucking ashamed for making it.
It never once felt special.
No.
And I think that's something that struck me about the latest Star Wars movies too, is they do not feel special.
Right. And they don't feel like they're nearly trying or really like thinking about it enough. They're resting on like imagery. And they're like, it feels like they were just like, it's good enough. And it's weird that they've spent so much money. And again, it feels like rock bottom for our studio system.
I mean, I feel like part of that budget is the fact that there's like a 25-minute sequence of a de-aged Harrison Ford. Like that's not cheap.
Oh yeah. Now it all went to Antonio Banderas. He was like $100 million to be in this. And they're like, we can't have it without you, Antonio.
They really
the glue.
They really put Antonio Banderas in an Indiana Jones movie and fucking wasted him.
Yeah. Why wasn't he the villain? Why wasn't he
a huge character? Why was he in one scene and then gets shot kind of off screen?
It's a baffling film, and I don't understand why they would make this and think that they're going to make money. And I don't know what they thought they were doing. My only guess is that this was a disaster behind the scenes. This was like Waterworld or something, where like they were so pot committed by the end that they had to slap something together.
Man.
Because it feels,
It's dark.
yeah, I mean, that's all I can think with this. Like that, why would they do that ending? Again, he's not the one obsessed with Archimedes. It's the other guy. They established that. Why would they have him have no agency?
Yep.
Why would he get... Remember the eels scene where he's just like bothered by eels
Right.
and then it doesn't...
Because they're kind of
really
like
go
snakes,
anywhere?
but then it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And you can't even tell what's going on in that sequence anyway.
You really can't. And then it just ends and it's like, oh, okay.
I guess that didn't matter. Like, it's, man. What
It's a real fucking,
they really,
just a wet
yeah, they really
fart.
throw a lot of stuff away in this movie.
They do. It feels like a mess, and it feels like you're saying, the director's not a bad director, although I've repeatedly found myself not liking the stuff. David Koepp is one of the 4 screenwriters on this. 4 fucking screenwriters, which is a big sign to me. Not counting the like story by credits, that makes it 6 screenwriters technically is credited.
Oof.
It's not bad people behind it, so I can only kind of conclude this was a cynical studio money grab, that once Spielberg dropped out, they should have said, oh, okay, so we're not doing it.
Right.
Like, that's what they should have said. They should have said, we're not doing it then. Spielberg, this is his series, but since they couldn't do that, they probably already dumped money into it. They were just like, all right, let's keep it going. And like, I don't know what happened. Probably some pandemic shit. But there is some point where they should have said we need to stop early on, and they didn't. And then it was too late, and we got this. And it is, I don't know, man. Like they should just bury this film.
I mean, this film is going to get buried by time. I think
It really
I think
is.
this one is going to be the forgotten.
Yeah.
This is going to be
It
like
should
this
be.
is going to be like the Never Say Never Again of the James
Yeah.
Bond series.
And it's weird because it made me really depressed, and it didn't make me depressed because, like, you know, me and you were writers. I don't think of this as like, oh, how bad did Hollywood get? Because Hollywood's studios movies have been pretty fucking bleak.
Yeah.
But indie films, not Indiana Jones, but indie films are fine. You know, I don't think I'm not a doomsayer with movies where I'm like, it's all getting worse. I think it ebbs and flows, like depending on you know certain things.
Yeah, I think the current we are witnessing the current studio bubble bursting.
I sure fucking hope so. Yeah, and that definitely needs to burst for sure. There is a problem with studio blockbusters. There has been for a while, and this symbolizes that for sure. But what really made me sad was just as an Indiana Jones fan, it just made me sad. Like I was just like this. I hate this. It made me sad all day after watching it. Whereas like, what a bad fucking Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't know.
It didn't make me feel anything but frustrated.
Yeah.
So
This is Jurassic World again for me. Where
yeah,
I'm just
I think
like,
it's a little
what
bit
a
better than
sad
Jurassic
fucking-
World, but not by much.
It is better.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
it is a little better than Jurassic World for sure. But I think it's a similar vibe to me, where it didn't understand the movies. Like Jurassic World clearly didn't understand Jurassic Park. And I think it for a lot of people it was good enough because they're like, well, it has the music and there's the dinosaurs, and this feels the same where it's like, yeah, he's got the hat and whip, you know, it's fun.
Does he use
It's
the
like,
whip?
is it though?
No.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Is he at all the same character? Does it feel like the same film? I just don't think so.
It really doesn't. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say about this, Dave. We can be done.
Okay. I'm gonna I don't know, use a dial to go back in time
Yeah.
to when I don't have to see this movie.
Assassinate this movie.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back. Yeah, I'm gonna assassinate this movie. That's what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do. Oh fuck. Hi everybody. We have a Patreon.
We do.
Patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. You can go on there. You can get like exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, Star Trek Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. I'm not gonna be watching this one.
No.
I mean, maybe when the wound is healed, because like we watched Jurassic World, I feel like just to complain about it at
We
some
did.
point.
Yeah, we did. This is a long one, though.
Yeah, this is a long one.
So
That's
it's the
another
longest
problem.
Indiana Jones movie. It has no right to be.
Has no right to be. But yeah, check out our Patreon. You love us. You love us. You love us.
We also have a store. Head over to patreon.com. Head over to gamefieldemployee.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store. We have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs. So you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your time traveling peepers onto that.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. Oh, when he punches that kid, we didn't talk about that.
Wait, what?
When Salah punches the fucking.
Oh yeah.
Fucking
he just
yeah. That
I don't need
high
it.
point of the movie.
Sure.
That's it.
Sure.
He runs in, punches a guy who's like, "I know you. You're a fugitive."
He Superman punches a guy that should have seen him sprinting up to Superman punch him.
Amazing. Great movie. Perfect movie.
Incredible film. Flawless. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.